Okay, so this is going to be a video about pushing, how to push correctly. So what I've set up is basically a very classic no-net fight, I would say. I know it's all my color, obviously, but technically this is supposed to be two fights. So this is my base in this case. I can't build here because of the TC, but just imagine this is a full base. This is my army. A classic setup. We both have a similar army. Just some kind of everything in the base. And now imagine you've been trading well all game, you've maybe outplayed your opponent somehow, or he's fed, whatever. Somehow you realize he is drained. And he starts doing this. He just suddenly starts backing up, right? He goes back to his base. So how do you react to that with this army being the aggressive player? So your advantage right now is you have two mortars out, which means you can simply like slowly target his buildings. What you also should do is move up your culverins right away. So what you do here is you move up. You don't move up the cav yet. The cav is not useful yet. Why is the cav not useful? The cav is just going to run into the towers and his units sitting in between here. So what you do move up is your infantry that can shoot at range. So the very far back units are not going to shoot your infantry yet. You're going to want to position your horse out as far forward as possible in this scenario and start picking his army. What happens is his army runs forward randomly because they got fire that they want to defend themselves. So it's going to take your opponent that is drained extra micro to back up even further. What you do at the same time, assuming you somehow drop pop during the trades, is you're going to queue a little mortar. You always want to maximize your pushing potential. Okay, so now your opponent is going even further back because, well, you just took a good trade. You wait until the towers are sieged down by the mortars, or if his army is far enough back, you can start approaching the towers yourself. So now you've taken this out. The first layer of base of your opponent is done for. I will not care too much about that. So what is the next step? Your opponent is probably, meanwhile, somehow trying to buy time to get resources back, so he's just gonna wall. He's somehow gonna try to I know this is a 1v1, but technically there's space in the 3v3. He's somehow gonna try to come back from this. So what is your next move? Your next move is to first rebase. So what you must see is, okay, to whack will I push freely, when is he gonna resist again? So you see this wall may be going up right now. After you've pushed this layer as well, this is gone. He's just fully backing up over here. So you see he's trying to wall this right now. This isn't siege down yet. This is where you just approach right now. What you see is you can do this kind of base setup right now. This base fits. There's enough space. If he had mortars in this, he could simply reach the stable and you could still carve it out. So you always need to make sure there's about 40 range between your new FB and his position of army. You don't want your base to be too close, otherwise you get mortared and your hotkeys get fucked. The next thing you do when you approach your opponent's base is you put the walls down. So you want your new flanks to be protected. What you can't even do, which depends on what civ your opponent is and his teammates, you can't even close your back. Protect yourself from potential flanks. Whoops, I don't even want these to be built actually. I think whatever. Okay, so now these layers, you will kill them. Now and kind of a new fight is gonna start again. Your opponent's units are gonna be shooting again, but this time he's in walls. He's camping behind walls. So how do you approach the walls without just getting wrecked? Assuming your opponent has probably massed artillery, as that is his best option to come back from being down score, there is two things you can do. Either you set up your own towers right now to camp, basically with camp while pushing. That is a good option, so you delete your towers and just start camping yourself here. And you just start doubling a little with your teammates. Assuming it's somewhat even on the size, you can just somehow give them an advantage. You force your opponent to do something, because their teammates are going to be like, hey, this guy is here, can you do something, please? So either they try to push out despite being in a probably worse position, or they try to double back. When they try to double back, you will abuse that. You will go full ham with your own mortars that you've queued and that you've had, and you just berserk his walls. He's the one pushed far back. He can't really give up more ground. If he does, you're probably going to end his eco. Unless the position is fully closed by 1 million walls, then you will have to double more with your team and just slowly mortar down his walls. But let's more likely look at the other scenario. The other scenario is you just want to get in. You just want to get in at all costs. So how do you push that? What units do you make? What units do you not make, and why? What you do want to make is a ton of artillery. His only chance to come back from being pushed back is artillery. So the only thing you don't want to allow your opponent to do is kill you with artillery. If he pumps out a random 30 Huss wave, then that's expensive. Assuming he's somehow down or went back because he's draining, that's going to cost him a lot, and you can simply melee your musk or whatever. You're getting these flank walls up. Killing the calf should be no problem. You can just focus your entire army on that. He can't really ever push out completely, because if he does, his artillery mass becomes useless. So your goal is to mass about probably up to 8 or 10 corps, just somehow kill his artillery while having mortars behind and killing. Having a lot of pop and mortars is not even bad for your trades when you're approaching his base, because mortars happen to kill units below gates. So actually the mortars are pop effective in the actual fight. Your opponent has to pay extra attention to where he positions his artillery to not lose it to the mortars, which is mad annoying, let me tell you. Once you see that he has maybe no cannons, you just even trade it even on culverins, you can approach with the infantry. Usually you just want your artillery to shoot and your infantry stays at max range. If he doesn't have a lot of units, then it's obviously no problem to just kind of approach it. Put your infantry in this position. Don't run in with the cap when there's walls though. Wait until this wall has been deleted by the mortar, and now if he has skirms there, which would make sense, right? It makes sense that he has skirms and walls and not musk. Then you send in your Huss and attack this. When you realize it's working, you just keep going. Your steam doesn't run out, you can still mortar the walls. If you suddenly realize, oh my god, you just lost your entire forward, just back up your infantry, remass artillery. Pushing has different degrees, and what I'm showing you right now is the push against someone who knows how to defend. Defending is easier. You are the one pushing out of your towers, into maybe flanks, out of your own flanks. So basically you just have to make sure you free as much of this as possible. Wall it, make sure he doesn't get vills over here. Somehow force it to a choke point, to basically get a new close position. That's the thing you want. You can't really get insane flanks when pushing, not when someone is sitting in base walls. So what you do is you want to close it out. So this flank is dangerous, this flank is dangerous, you wall it, you're fine. And then you just slowly approach with more artillery. So a known way to push is obviously the musk Huss mortar. The issue with that is it's actually super easy to be countered if the opponent knows what he's doing. Why is that? That's because the only thing your opponent has to make is handicap. Musk and Goon will beat Musk Huss very hard and effectively, and he just has to make some cannons for your skirms and he's fine in the camp. So Musk Huss may be good in the beginning of the game in an open position, where it's quite hard to position yourself, get artillery out, your skirms are vulnerable. Musk Huss will just be very effective, but once you approach the walls, Musk Huss starts losing value really quickly. That is why you will find me when I'm pushing with a lot of Musk, or for example with India with a Wildebeest for Sepoy. You will see me get to base walls quickly, but getting through base walls is a different task. That's when you switch to skirms. You start camping with skirms in front of the walls, forcing them to make expensive units when being pushed back, forcing them to make melee when being pushed back, to like allow you to take trades within your own tower, castle, whatever range. And only when you have sieged down his stuff far enough, you start approaching forward. What people often say is make melee to push. That is reasonable, and you probably do need cav to push, but the most important aspect is to move up your army. And it doesn't mean do this and forget this. It means move up your army, your entire army. That is the most important aspect of a push. And you don't just walk it up in the middle when your opponent has flanks. That's what doesn't work. What you gotta do is you gotta spread your army, and that's not easy. Pushing is the most difficult aspect of a treaty. But if you want to execute it correctly, you will have to slowly execute it and not fast. A fast push can work when your opponent is either completely dead or just much weaker. A good opponent cannot be pushed super quickly. Unless they're doing something else. Maybe they're on a different spot in the map and you're like, okay, I'm gonna punish him for that. But a good opponent that is camping back because of the loss of resources is still not out of control of the entire game. So what you do is you slowly move up your your units as a line. You don't want to give him a better position because he's the one camping. You want to bait him into losing that position again. And you want to open it up. Bit by bit. The other thing it does when you spread out your army like this is you kind of force your opponent to do the same. If he doesn't, you get better angles on him. But what happens when he does is he opens up and these units are not going to be able to protect this artillery anymore. So it becomes way more vulnerable to overall cav flanks and you need more micro to protect them. The easiest micro is either to melee your musketeers or right click your goons. Both can be helped by walls. Either way you will have to try hard when pushing. Pushing is exhausting, pushing is much more work than camping, because you need much less repositioning for your army. Let me know if that helped you, if that type of video is one I should make, or if I should rather watch at actual examples of games and commentate them. I feel like the pace is different, so it's harder to explain everything, but I may do a second part of pushing. That's it for now.